Welcome to the Sacred Healing Podcast, where the old is new, the ancient is innovative, and the forgotten is remembered. We believe that sacred healing is your birthright. Join us on each episode as we uniquely, authentically, and mystically dive into the bold and vulnerable life of many magical humans. From breath, spirituality, shadow work, and all things in the esoteric realm of healing, we don't leave any stone unturned on this bold journey of growth as we start to explore the remembrance of what it means to be human. So take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, and let's get sacred. Hello, Sacred Family, and welcome to another episode of the Sacred Healing Podcast. Today, I'm chatting with a beautiful soul named Dana, who has a unique frequency through her prayer and through her words. And after going through a series of dark nights of the soul and navigating loss and pain and grief and heartbreak, accompanied by a workaholic attribute and people-pleasing, she was able to call in a new way of life. She was able to get away from those escapism habits and numbing and really call in her dharma. And she's made peace with her past and committed to growth and spirituality and calling in her highest purpose. And she's undergone a path of understanding and intention and awareness and surrender and gratitude and magic. And she's uncovered her true gifts. And she's a sound therapist, among many other things. But she also is an advocate of plant medicine and an advocate of serving her community. And Dana recently quantum leaped into the life that she has. And she's always known it was waiting for her to receive. And she has found love. And she lives a life full of love now with beauty and abundance. And she tuned herself to the frequency of the highest good of all and got into flow and started to trust. And that's when she called in her beautiful love and romance. And so we talk about all that and more. We also talk about how she brings her magical gifts and her dharma of prayer and sound therapy to the world. So without further ado, welcome this beautiful conversation with my friend Dana.
Hand on heart, hand on belly, allow the eyes to fall shut. Just connecting with your heart space. Connecting with your breath. Releasing any tension in your shoulders, face, back, butt, legs. Really breathing into the moment. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this moment to connect, for this moment to share, to receive, to be heard, to be seen, to be held. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this life, for this breath, for this being. Thank you for the gifts and the words and the song that we sing every day. Thank you. Thank you for this moment of gratitude, the space that we dance in throughout the moments that keep us connected to source, to self, to community, to Pachamama, to self. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, body. Thank you, friends. Thank you, family. Thank you, wind. Thank you, fire. Thank you, water. Thank you, air. Thank you, love. Thank you, Jessica Sears. You can add on to it if you.
Thank you for showing up and allowing yourself to be seen even though there's some crunchy parts that maybe don't want to be fully viewed yet. Thank you for clean water, clean air, clean food, clean energy. We get to be here in this moment in time together, sharing breath, sharing conversation, sharing hearts. Deep inhale and exhale. And coming back to our space.
That felt nice.
Yeah, it did. It's always good to drop in before we're about to release a ton of stuff. So we'll get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of the Sacred Healing Podcast. Today, we have the beautiful Dana with us, and I'm so excited because Dana and I haven't really gotten super, super deep. We've had a few conversations, but I'm really excited to dive into more knowing her. And before we got started kind of chatting, she mentioned to me, wow, I'm like kind of like an introvert. And it got me really thinking about the power of introverts in general in our society. And Dana's one of those people that when she speaks, it's an important thing to say. Like she really is not only deeply listening to the person, but then speaks when it's the most important and the most healing. And she just reminds me that introverts can trust their gut and share their ideas just as powerfully as they can. And this doesn't look the same way that those who identify as extroverts share, and meaning that she can have an amazing idea and it can be just as powerful as anyone else. And simultaneously, she can share that in a unique and authentic way, which might even be more powerful. And so, just thinking on that, it got me feeling into some of my most introverted friends who share the most quietly or communicate in writing or in lecture not only have a huge impact, but their ideas are then advanced by their loud or louder allies. And it also got me thinking about Susan Cain, who's the woman who gave the infamous TED Talk on the power of introverts and changing the world. And she says that the trick for introverts is to honor their own style instead of allowing themselves to be swept up by any like prevailing norm. And this is the essence of the power that I think Dana holds as an introvert and a deep listener and somebody who shares on a deep level. And these are her magical superpowers. So I'm just really excited to get to know her more. Part of like the know thyself and the know the Dana self. I'm really excited to dive into that. And we're going to talk a lot about a lot of juicy topics today. And we've got a lot of things on the agenda. So I'm just really grateful that Dana's here and really gave us a grounding essence and started us off with gratitude. So thank you for being on the show. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Me too. Me too. It's interesting because speaking of the introvertedness, I literally just had to spend 2 hours this morning by myself in my own space. Like my energy whooshed my fiance out of the house because I woke up in the most like gnarly energy. Like it was so interesting. I didn't sleep well. The dogs woke me up. My fiance was waking me up because he's got this cough. And I was so excited about this, connecting with you today. I wanted to wake up feeling refreshed and revived and clear minded. And I woke up like, ah. And so I spent 2 hours going through every tool in my toolbox, dancing, meditating, gonging, pulling a card, just sitting in stillness, playing my favorite playlist to get energy out, to just switch my energy because I know that I can go from here to here, but I have to have the awareness. And if you were to ask me when I was younger, I would have been a complete extrovert. I needed to be the center of attention. I needed to be, I liked being seen. I liked being heard. I liked being in crowds or lots of people. And then as I evolved and had so many, we have so many deaths in our life. And now I am embracing this introverted part of myself where I appreciate my alone time. Like, I've spent so many years being single where I'd wake up in the morning, have my lemon water, have my quiet, wake up with breath, and no one really needing anything from me. And now it's like I need that. I crave that to refill my cup. And it is our responsibility to know when our cup is starting to lower and what, like where we're at. And so this morning I knew I needed time to, have my tea, have my cacao, like do all the things that my body, spirit just really needed. I needed to move energy, and my energy, I think maybe because I've done so much work, when I'm in groups of people, I give them my full presence. I give them my full attention, my heart, and so it does take energy out of my cup. And that's the difference between introverted and extrovertedness. When we're introvertedness, we gain energy being in solace by ourselves, listening to our intuition, listening to our body, just being present with ourselves, being as present with ourselves as we are when we're with others. And the extrovertedness usually gets energy from others. And it's been a really interesting transition going from extrovert to introvert. And I like both of them, but this introverted part of me right now, it's just like, I just love alone time. I really do.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a word for like the extra introvert, like an ambivert, I believe is the word for that, where you can like actually
Mm.
weave back and forth between the two and like really resonate with both. And
Mhm.
like simultaneously have both of them as a part of you, but one comes out in different ways. And what I love about you is that you are so genuine and authentic about being just like on the path to knowing yourself. And it's something that I resonate with deeply because I'm like, I'm still learning. I don't have it all figured out. I'm like totally clueless. Like I'm the dumbest one in the room. And I feel like you bring that energy as well, just like a deep, deep listening energy. And sometimes that can like manifest into this resistance to show up and like really serve. And so I would love for you to chat about what it's been like kind of living in this new wave of introvertedness as a part of you that almost stops you from showing up in your fullness, where you can really authentically say, yeah, I'm here to serve and like I'm worthy and I'm enough.
Um, it's interesting. I just made a big move from Austin to the this rural countryside along this beautiful river, but it's two huge different spaces. And
Is
in
it
Austin,
still
I
in
didn't really.
Texas?
No, I'm in New York
Oh,
on the
wow,
border of Canada.
girl.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Well,
I'm on
your
the border of
fireplace is
Canada and New York.
beautiful.
Thank you. You should see the river outside. It's amazing. Um, but so I was called to this place because Austin is full of spiritualness. There's a juice store, a yoga store, and a sound bath going on every corner. And here we don't have that much. We have one yoga studio, and this way a cacao circle or a women's circle or these things aren't as prevalent. And a lot of things like an ecstatic dance, I don't know if there's ever been one over here. And I was called to this space. I know in my heart of heart, like in my knowingness, that to serve. And I got goosebumps
I'm getting
everywhere.
goosebumps because I'm like resonating with everything that you're saying. being in Massachusetts, there's like not a lot of this where I'm located. And I feel that like there's not really any good yoga studios. Like there are some, but it's like it's a different vibe, right? It's a different energy. And so I absolutely feel the same way that like I'm here in this like salty place because there's not a lot of healing going on. And I love that you're also in that space too, because it brings a whole different vibe. And everyone's like, "Oh, you should move to Austin. You should move to Austin." And I'm like, "No, like I'm meant to be here. Like this is
Yeah.
the spot where people need this medicine the most."
And it puts a sense, or, I used to just grind, in the 3D, in the corporate world, in the startup world, when I lived in Austin and Houston, like these big cities. And now life is a slower pace, and I appreciate that so much. And it's such a gift. I don't have to be stuck to my phone all the time, which is like the new freedom. I lose my phone in the house for hours, and I'm like, this is what freedom feels like. But I also feel like I have this pressure to serve, to show up in my best self, to share all of the amazing things that I learned when I was filling my up in Austin, when I was, going through these really deep, deep, dark nights of the soul, where I learned so much of myself, where I learned so much of the healing process. And my path isn't the path for everyone, but I know I have overflowing toolbox of things to share and things to offer with people. And so I started, going to the yoga studio. I have a great relationship with Liz, and she's just an anchor in our community, and she's such a leader, and she shows up fiercely every day. And I'm like, I'll commit to one event a month and maybe a one-on-one sound bath, one-on-one sound vibrational therapy. And I want to make sure that I am at my very best to serve. And I never know, I'm like, am I going to be that way? On next Wednesday, am I going to be there? Am I going to have everything it takes to serve? And I have to give myself grace and know whatever is meant to be heard will be heard. Whatever is meant to be felt will be felt. And maybe not showing up in your best is also a gift for people, to give them the ability to show up however they are, and to know that they are still loved, and you are still valuable, and you are still, that's part of the human process, the humanness is just show up. And that's the hardest part. And then when you show up, everything always like just falls into place. And I'm saying this, it's like a reminder to myself, like it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to every moment be planned out, and to trust when you're leading with your heart that it will show you the way. And I'm reminding myself that right now.
Yeah. And as you talk about this resistance, you're showing up anyway in the perfectly imperfect way that you are, right? And you mentioned a few dark night of the souls. That's kind of a term that's like that people use when they're going through huge transition, life change, awakening, whatever word you want to put onto it. I would love to dive into what those dark night of the souls looked like for you, and what you had to kind of like grind through in order to get past that.
Yeah. Ooh, good stuff. The first one was really intense, and I think it was a culmination. It was in my mid-20s. I didn't even know what dark night of the soul. It was just life or death, really, that I was going through. And it was a huge shift in the masculine energies in my world. My father passed away. My grandfather passed away. My husband at the time left. We were only married for like 3 months, and then he like got up and left, which was a gift in retrospect. And my 2 cats passed away. They were both boys. It all within 4 months of each other. And, you know, I didn't realize it at the time, but, you know, a couple of years after, I'm like, wow, every close male in my world at that point in time vanished. And I was like a zombie. I couldn't function. You know, I would go to work and I'd just stare at my computer, and I felt so lost. And it really took a lot of, it took a lot of time to navigate that, because I'd learned from that experience for probably 5 years, maybe three to 5 years. And I ended up replacing the masculine energies with one masculine energy that was became my partner in relationship and in business and many things. And it wasn't the most healthy energy. It was fairly narcissistic and heavy. But I was just like replacing them and what felt familiar. And as a child, my father, he struggled with addiction, but he also loved fiercely. And he told me he loved me and how proud he was of me every day. But he struggled with his own love of self. And as a child, I ended up being more of a support system for him rather than a child and having like a fun childhood. I mean, there were some good points, but for the most part, I grew up fairly quickly. And when he passed, 2 weeks before he passed, I'm Pisces, so I'm fairly intuitive. And I get nudges. And 2 weeks before he passed, I heard this voice or felt this feeling of the question, can you let him go? And I said yes. And then 2 weeks later, I got the call that he passed away. And he was only 56. He was not like, you know, it was an expected thing. And I was so close with him. And so it took me being open, like to get I had a medium who read for us. And she said that, I mean, she just showed me so many things, and it gave me peace. Like, for example, I had just moved to Austin. My husband left. He left me with a car, no air conditioning in Austin. And it was the first summer. And so I'm driving on Mopac, which if you know it, it's like the biggest highway, and you get traffic jams. And I would sit there and I would eat cold grapes, frozen grapes, to keep my body cold. And I would talk to my dad like he was sitting in the passenger seat, because I would be stuck in traffic, and I'd just talk with him. And that was my time to connect with him. And it was really sacred and precious. And when the medium came, she said, I feel the energy, I feel the love. And she started crying, because she goes, I rarely ever cry, but I feel the love between the two of you is so intense. She goes, he hears you. He's in the passenger seat next to you, and he hears you. And sometimes he needs to grab the wheel and get you back on course, because I'm a crazy driver. And it was just crazy that she knew that. And it gave me this faith and this knowing, like, we are always connected. And from that point on, I felt more connected with my father than I've ever felt during his physical presence here, which was really strong anyways. And so that was a pivotal moment for me to start trusting in the energetic fields. And that was my first really big dark night of the soul. Like, and looking at like his energies, like she cut some golden cords that attached us. He asked if he can cut them, because they were holding me back from me being me, like the feeling of I needed to be responsible for his actions, the feeling like I was responsible for healing others. And now, as I'm not a healer, I'm a sound therapist. I hold space for people to heal themselves, and knowing like we have that power in ourselves. So, the passing of my father was my first really dark night of the soul for me to know, like, I can do this on my own. I don't need the masculine in my life. Like, I don't need to have a man in my life to show me what's right or what's wrong, or to carry along, or to fix. And there's still lessons that I'm learning in that. Like, still, that was a big one. The next, do you want me to go on to the next one? I mean, I could talk about that one all day, but
Yeah, I
can
think
go
that was
into
like, yeah, that was a beautiful like encompassment of what you went through. Um, Hello, sacred humans. Quickly, I want to share with you something I've added into my daily rituals that has me buzzing, and that is Rise Mushroom Coffee. Rise entered my life through my Instagram algorithm that obviously knows what products I like, and I gave it a try, and just wow, it has amazingly delicious flavor. Not only this, they also have a mushroom matcha powder. Phew, mind blown. And they're filled with superfoods and super mushrooms. What I like about Rise is that they use 100% organic ingredients, and their mushroom farms are located in California. If you've always wanted to try mushroom coffee but haven't yet pulled the trigger, this is your moment. And there is zero risk because they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're interested in the deliciousness of Rise mushroom elixirs, head to the show notes and you will find a link for 20% off your first order. Or simply use the discount code Jessica, all caps, at checkout. That's JESSICA, all caps, at checkout. And now, let's get back to our amazing episode of the Sacred Healing Podcast. Yeah, that was a beautiful encompassment of what you went through as a child, and the relationship with your dad, and how that masculine presence like really shaped your life. And then cut to kind of filling it with something that maybe wasn't super healthy. What was the second dark night of the soul, or second death rebirth that you went through?
It's hard to count them because I feel like there are major ones and then there are mini ones in between,
Yeah, the macro deaths and the micro deaths, and they all kind of like write the story of your life. Yeah.
So in between those, got into this relationship, and it was 12 years long. And I hid it in that relationship because it was never really fully committed, although that was desiring. And I thought, well, once I hit the 10-year mark, then of course we're going to be committed, right? But it never changed. It was like I was expecting these linear things to be happening, and it didn't happen. And the mirrors in my life, like my friends didn't love that relationship. I was crying all the time. Like every day I would cry. I didn't recognize, like I would read books about narcissism. I would listen to podcasts about gaslighting. I would look at myself and I would look at polyamory. Oh, maybe this is what it is. But none of it felt healthy or safe. But we were building businesses together, and I was financially dependent on those businesses that, he was leading. And so it felt like I wasn't strong enough to find a new career, find a new relationship, find a new home, like all of those things. And I felt stuck, really, and I was like, well, I'm so independent. Like we didn't really live together, but I was so independent that I could do whatever I wanted. And then on occasion we would see, like once every week we'd see each other, and I would end up crying. And it was just really, like, I can laugh about it now, thank God, but I was not in the space of my power. Like, because I would always give my power to the masculine or to the men in my life. Like, you're the leader. And I ended up doing Cambo. Ooh, I love that medicine so much. I went through a series of sitting with Cambo. And the first one was, it just got me onto the spiritual path more so. I felt clean after. I felt prepared. I went through another one, and my setting the intention before the medicine journey was really powerful. And so my intention was to release all relationships that are no longer serving my highest good. And what do you think left 3 weeks later? That one relationship with this 12-year, partner. And now we traveled the world together. We built companies together, which were like my children. And we were in a company at that time, and it was gone. Like, I just drew a line in the sand, like, no more. I called my power back in that ceremony. And like, I still have the 5 dots on my what is it, sacral or solar plexus in my lower back. But
yeah, your sacral part
sacral.
was it right on your spinal cord?
Yeah.
Well,
there's
right on your
like
sacrum.
a triangle and one in the middle.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember purging this energetic feeling. And what the energy felt like was this moldy, dark peach pit that just like came out of me. And then 3 weeks later, like, it was done. I said, I'm no more. I'm never talking with you. I'm never speaking. I'm never seeing him. Like, I'm done. And that's what they say you have to do when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, like, just completely cut it off. And I never thought I was able to do that. Never. And then, so that next year, my body, I started breaking out in eczema. I had under my armpits, I had eczema all over my body. My body was just purging a lot, or getting rid of a lot of stuff. And so I came here to where I live now, because I have a little summer home here. And they say, when you're lost, go home. And I have a little 700 square foot cottage on an island that's just surrounded by nature. And I just stayed there for 2 months, and I just listened, and I was quiet, and I was still. And I had no clue what was happening. Like, where am I going to work? Where am I going to live? Where am I going to, like, what? Because I couldn't live on my island. It's only for the summertime, or like, once winter comes, it's like, you can't live there. So I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go? I was so lost, but I trusted. I just trusted, and I connected with the feeling of what it would feel like to be living in my highest purpose. Like, what is it like to be living in your highest purpose, to wake up and live your best life possible, to live the juiciness of every day, to live in abundance, to live in love, to live feeling respected and in your power? What is it like? And I just connected to those feelings. And although they felt far away, like, in the moment, they were present. Like, if I really grounded into it, I can feel it in every cell of my body. And it was really interesting, because I had to give I had this little puppy that I rescued. She wasn't a puppy, she was a real dog, but she's little. And I needed to rehome her for various reasons. And the universe was telling me, make space. Make space. It's time to make space. And I'm like, this little dog doesn't take up that much space. Why do I have to rehome her? And so I was supposed to she was supposed to go to her home on September 11th, but they ended up calling me and said, we're going to take her Sunday morning, which was September 10th. And so my last night with her was September 9th, the 9/9 portal. And I didn't realize that it was 9/9 portal. It just so happened to be that. And I went out onto my dock and I looked under the stars, which was my favorite view of the river. And I was just so sad. I had no clue where I was going to live. I had no clue what my job was going to be. I didn't know who was going to love me. I didn't know what my next step was going to be. And now I'm giving away this little dog that I absolutely love. And she's going to a beautiful home and it's great. But I'm so lost. And I broke. I had pushed my edges to this place of such discomfort that I just broke under the stars. And I cried and I cried. And I just said, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready to feel love. I'm ready to feel respect. I'm ready to let go of the weight of the world that I've been carrying by myself on my shoulders. I am ready. And I just cried. And then I went back to my cottage and I cuddled with my little dog, Mila, and I went to sleep. And the next morning, she crossed the river on an old wooden boat, like a romantic movie, and she went with her new home, her new family, and I still get to see her. And I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, she's my spiritual advisor. Mom, should I just want to stay at the cottage and cry. I just want to cry all day under the blankets. She goes, Dana, you're in your favorite place. Like this, you're at your cottage, go on your boat, go in the water, be under the sun, do what you love. So I took my other dog, Piper, who is my soulmate, and we went to this spot called Bathtub Bay and the river where my dad used to take me as a little girl. It's like a sacred space for me. And Piper and I just laid under the sun. And then this man anchors behind me. And he had a couple people on the boat. And he was like, hey, are you on your boat with your dog by yourself? I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's cool. He's like, why don't you come hang out with us? And I was in this really fragile space, like I am just sad right now. I'm probably not that fun to be around, but I'd like to have a distraction. So Piper and I went to swim. And then meanwhile, previously, a week prior, I asked the universe for a riverman. And I also asked the universe for a man who would love my dogs as much as I love them. And so this guy, he's like, well, I'm swimming back to my boat. And I go, I'll just bring my dog to my boat and then I'll come visit. He goes, no, bring your dog on the boat with you. And I'm like, you are going to let my dog come on your boat? Like, that's cool. Anyway, fast forward, he's now my fiance. I met the love of my life the day after I asked the universe for love. Like the day after I asked the universe and told them I'm ready, told it I'm ready. And then I received it all. And it's just, I really think like when you're in a dark night of the soul, where you push your edges of discomfort so much to the point where you feel like you're a rubber band and you just build up so much momentum in this energy, like the energy of a rubber band that's being stretched. You build up so much momentum. But my focus was on living my best version of myself. And that goes back to this or better, right? I'm either going to have this, which was this relationship where, yes, I was in abundance, but I wasn't in love. And I was in many other places, but it was either that or better. And that's what I got. And so using that's been kind of like a what motto since I was a little girl, it was like this or better, but I'm not going backwards. And so every dark night of the soul is an opportunity for you to get better. That was a lot.
Thank you for sharing. It's so beautiful. And you and I were talking about this or better before we jumped on here today. And it's one of those things where you know that you're destined for something bigger than yourself. And the fact that you called all this in, manifested it, like talked to the universe, had a conversation, and then this amazing partner appears. I'm curious how this partnership is different than others, and not necessarily to compare, but more on how you navigate partnership and not get lost in the masculine like you did previously, and not get lost in that okay, they're the leader, I'll follow, or I'll, like, almost, if you don't, manifest whatever you want in your life, somebody else will, right? So not to follow what that other person is doing, but maintaining your sense of self and your sense of purpose. How has this relationship really been different from previous relationships, and really we'll call it a partnership, because I think that you are in true divine partnership. And what does that look like for you, and what are you doing to maintain yourself but also be in partnership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my previous relationships from childhood until just before this relationship, my nervous system was used to roller coaster, high highs, low lows, high highs, low lows. That was my comfort zone. And eventually, you don't want to live on a roller coaster anymore. That doesn't feel good anymore. Although you know how to ride the ride, it's not comfortable. Like, you're over it. You're like, get me off. I want to just not. And so that was what my nervous system actually still expects sometimes now. Like, I'll find myself being like, all right, like now I am, my partner is a little bit older than me. Not a little bit, like a lot bit. He's 26 years older than me. He provides a really safe space. He loves me, for all of, like, he can hold my space, hold my energy. And it's a lot, it's different. And the first time we took a car ride together, I told him secrets that I've never even told my best friend. And so I knew he can hold, like, the dark parts of me without judgment. And so I felt really safe. Whereas I don't know if I've ever had that experience with anyone. I just felt like, you know what? Here it is. And I'm going to see. Like, if you can't hold this part of me, then but he could. And he held it with such gentleness and love and respect, actually. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So that was really helpful. And it was helpful to feel safe, feeling safe, and not questioning it. And so we moved pretty quickly into this. We moved in together probably within the first 2 months. I mean, it was fairly rapid, but I knew how I felt in my being. I felt like I could trust myself when I was with him. I didn't have to, like, play head games, or there wasn't like these back and forth. It was like, no, I feel good. And the one thing I asked for him was consistency. I need you to show up consistently. And he does, and he still does. And it's beautiful, because I've never had consistency except ups and downs, expecting when shit was going to hit the fan. And this is a much more beautiful ride that I'm on. Now that we live together, like, I was living alone before. So I would wake up and I would be able to just do whatever I wanted to. I was very independent. And now he's a very strong character. Like, he is, I call his nickname is Right Now, Rob. So right now, we got to do things right now. And so when he's ready to go, and he's a captain, he's like the captain of the boat. So, like, if we're going, like, if he's ready to go, we're going. And so I really have to be centered and recognize when I'm wobbly. And I would find myself, one of the first things I learned is, like, I would start getting irritated with him. I would be like, oh, what's happening with him? And I'd start recognizing like my focus is on him and what he's doing to irritate me. And then I took some space away and I recognized, oh, this isn't about him. This is about me not holding my boundaries, not listening to my inner self saying, you need space to rest. You need space to connect with your higher self, because he is such a strong energy that I do follow him on occasion, because it's easier to follow sometimes than it is to lead, to just be like, okay, what are we doing today? And he can just take the lead all the time. And when I start getting irritated with him, that's when I realize, ooh, I need to connect with me. I need to go play my gong. I need to go meditate. I just need to breathe with myself. I need to be in nature. I need to sun gaze. I need to connect. I need to listen. I need to listen to what I'm being called to do right now. And so, yeah, whenever I feel like there's tension between us, that's usually a sign that I'm not listening to myself, that I'm not connected enough to my higher self, that I'm not taking enough space to nurture me. And it's a beautiful awareness. And he has the awareness enough to give me the space that I need. And it's such a gift. It's such a gift. And I think, the roller coaster version of me will sometimes be like, we'll get into fear mode. Like, oh, well, he's this much older than me. And what if this? And I mean, I'll get sad and I'm like, no. Come back to the present moment, because we can control time by just being so present. We can expand the moment by just being so present that you lose track of time and it doesn't even matter, because if you're in love and gratitude in this moment, then everything can go away. It doesn't matter, So yeah, he's a beautiful mirror of many versions of myself.
Well, I'm really excited that you found sacred partnership. And also that it's been able to unlock these deeper forms of healing and meeting thyself, like meeting yourself in moments where you mentioned the world like you're a little wobbly, right? Like you're off of your true north. And some of those sacred practices that you mentioned, I would love to kind of dive deeper into some of those, because just going and you mentioned going and being with your gong, like sitting with sound, sitting with frequency. And I know that you do sound healing and integrate that with cacao and other healing practices. What does that mean for you to go and just sit with yourself and sit with your gong? And what does that practice typically look like for you when you're feeling a little bit wobbly?
I'm going to, how they say, whatever you love doing when you were a little girl, or when you were little, like that's what you should do as an adult. When my parents would take me out to a restaurant, and sometimes they would take us to a fancy restaurant, back in the day, they would have crystal glasses at the dinner table. My mom would teach me to dip my finger in the water and ring my finger around the crystal glass. Like, I love doing that. And now I get to do that as an adult. And my second favorite thing that I love doing was rocking babies to sleep, or holding animals until they fell asleep in my arms. And now as a sound therapist, I literally, do sound massage where I put bowls on the body and people just fall asleep. And I do it for animals too. And animals just fall asleep. And I'm like, isn't that freaking cool? It's just a cool thing. Like, those are the two things but you don't recognize that, you know, when you're going through all the things I'm supposed to do as you're growing up, you know. And so I think it's such a gift that I get to use sound and frequency as a way to tune the body. I mean, our body is an instrument, and I can feel in my body, like you can feel if you're tuned or not by the tension in your face, the tension in your neck, the tension wherever you hold tension. You can feel like, hey, I'm squeaky right now. The song I'm singing is not so pretty. And so I need to, and you can even hear it in the way you speak, in the words that you use, the vibration of our words. You know, what words am I saying? Am I saying fuck a lot? Like, that's not bad, but like, maybe that means I'm a little, you know, like on the edge. Am I in gratitude the whole time? What frequency am I in? And there's so many different awarenesses during, you know, the path of these dark nights of the souls. One of the practices that I had that was so powerful was picking a word every year and sticking to it. And that word was utilized as an anchor for me. And I have a roadmap of my words that I picked, and I stuck to them. They were, and I had usually it was a word that I had no relationship with, like awareness. I had no clue what awareness meant 5 years ago. What's awareness? But I picked it as my word so I can develop a relationship with that. And now I can have an awareness of myself. Where's my physical self? Where's my mental self? Where is my spiritual self? Have this awareness. What is the world in front of me that I'm seeing? Where is my focus? When I look outside, do I see all the beauty? Or do I see, you know, icky stuff, like poop on the ground or whatever? Like what? And that's an awareness of where you're at. You know, what are you focusing on? So I picked awareness. I picked gratitude. These are out of order. I picked magic. That was my word last year. I picked maybe accountability might have been one. Discipline, like all of these things. And so now they're ingrained in my cellular structure to be like, okay, this is where you're at. And they just come up. They're like, oh, you need to have this one. You need to have that. Like they just start coming up. I'm embodied them. So I embodied these words that I had no understanding of, but then they became a part of me. And those are tools that helped me to become the person who I am right now.
Today, I want to share with you all the delicious cacao with a K drinking chocolate. Cacao is one of my favorite brands of ceremonial grade cacao and is a delicious addition to my morning routine. Cacao is jam-packed with delicious nutrients that work with my body to stay energized, connected, and focused. What I also love about cacao is that they are a nonprofit on a mission to protect the native heirloom strands of cacao in both Peru and Guatemala by giving back to the farmers and communities that make it available to us. If you are interested in cacao with a K, go to the show notes and you will find a link for 10% off your first order, or simply by using the discount code Jessica, all caps at checkout. That's JESSICA, all capital letters at checkout.
And working with sound, like, and frequency, it's everywhere. Like it is everywhere. And it is also challenging being in partnership because my partner isn't as sensitive to sound as I am. I am so sensitive. Like if there's chaos on television, like the football going on for a long time, I could be happy in silence, just listen to my heartbeat. But noise, like I'm so sensitive to it, and that can like agitate me. So I go to my breath, like just your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly, anywhere you're at, like whether you're in your car, whether you're in front of people. It's so subtle, but it's such a grounding technique to do that. And breathing, breath. Being in the silence. That's lovely, a lovely space. Um, my gong, I'll go to my gong when I'm very much in my head, when I need to quiet all of the thoughts, because it gets so loud and you can feel the vibration moving through you. I mean, it's just like, wah, wah, wah. I love that. A caveat also, my parents in the 80s, they would go to these parties, and the most expensive things at people's houses in the 80s were the speakers. Like, don't touch the speakers. They were like, sacred. And so my parents, as like a newborn or a toddler or whatever, they put me under the speakers because they knew I would be safe there. And so if you're at the party, speakers, those vibrations were like going through my body. But that, like, I think was also helping to tune me to be sensitive to frequency and energy, which I think is a really cool gift. And what else? Am I digging into that part of the question? How can I go
Yeah.
more?
Yeah, and also like you're kind of unpeeling layer upon layer upon layer, and it helps me understand the tuning of a human being. And not only like the subtle tunings, but the the exact awareness of relationship to certain words and frequencies. And the fact that you've picked a different word for each year as almost like a mantra is is really like integrating an intention. And you could have known that word awareness your whole life, but do you have an embodiment experience with that word? And to me, when you spend so much time with something like that, that's where you turn that knowledge into wisdom and you truly start like living that on a vibrational frequency. And it reminds me of just the silliness of when I was young and throughout middle school and high school, I played the drums and I was like always playing the full drum set, like drum set, and then also marching band and playing the snare drum and stuff. And like cut to now, it's like drumming for me is this whole different realm of placement and beat and getting into these like deep, deep, deep like frequencies of like how do we change the cellular being of the body with just a little bit of sound? And how do you mimic that heartbeat or that like you said, getting put under the speaker, that boom, 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 that frequency that can really just like reset your whole body. And the way that you described it is like a body attunement. And that to me is so, so special. Because just you knowing I'm a little bit wobbly right now. I need to go sit with my gong or I need to go sit with my sound bowls. And there's also a sense of play. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
what did my younger self want to do with these sound bowls? Well, I just wanted to do this, right? I just wanted to do these little things. And it's like there's no expectation on it, which I think is really where you can find distinct joy in doing something that not only you love, but also helps reset and reattune your body to the present moment and feeling in deep, deep gratitude. So yeah, thank you for for sharing your just like deep connection with sound too. It's so integral into your being, and you can tell. Um, You've also mentioned other practices to kind of like get into stillness. What are some of the other things that when you're feeling like, ooh, okay, somebody else's energy is coming into my field, how do you like really just like realign yourself to center?
Mm-hmm.
Back to Dana.
Depending on, well, first of all, badass for playing the drums. That is so cool.
I thought I was badass too. So you just spoke to my younger self. Thank you so
Yes.
much. I really
And
thought I
you're
was cool.
You are cool.
I
Your
wore like
younger
long shorts, like I thought I was like a guy. I was like, yeah, playing the drums.
I love it.
So
It
funny.
takes big energy to, hold that.
Oh
I
God, I wish I could find like some old pictures of me just like rocking on the drums. I'll have to ask my mom because they're like hilarious.
One of my favorite things um, is going to a party and bringing my egg shaker
Mm.
and starting a drum circle.
Wait, I've
Like,
seen you with your egg shaker just like walking around before. And I'm like, what is that? And you're like, oh, it's my egg.
it's my egg.
What's in your
I love it.
hand? Uh,
And I worked with children too, on finding their rhythm. Like one of my favorite quotes: "If you can walk, you can dance. If you can talk, you can sing. And if you have a heartbeat, you have rhythm." And so, it's one of my favorite like kind of social experiments is just giving someone an egg shaker and like seeing what they do with it, and like that's tuning yourself too.
mhm.
Just take an egg shaker and like start playing with it, and then you can tune yourself with a simple thing as like an egg shaker. I give them to my nieces when I visit, and I'll bring an egg shaker, one of my tribal rattles or something, and they like just like shake the hell out of him, and it rattles things. It rattles stuck energy in you, and then it invites you to move your body too. It's just these simple invitations of sound. um, but like you're asking, another practice, when I feel like my energy is being infiltrated by an energy that is not necessarily so welcome, like I'm not really welcoming, or it means I'm not centered, first of all. So if I'm standing in like tree pose, in a subtle tree pose, will help me feel grounded. Taking my socks off, going to the grass, that will help me. It depends on the environment, right? You can't do that in the airport. But like anytime I go fly, I'll put a white gold circle of light just around me. I just pretend I'm in a bubble, like the boy in the bubble. And then I feel like impenetrable. Um, and it's just a visual, but it's like, this is my energy field. We have an energy field. It goes 6 feet outside of our body. And I'm not going to shrink myself to navigate in between all the other energies. Because when we're passing by people, whether we're communicating with them, whether we're talking with them, whether we're dancing among them, or walking by them in the grocery store, we are exchanging energies. And one of my intentions was for any energetic being or energetic field that I encounter is that I raise them up, or like my energy will help lift without taking energy away from me, right? And a practice that I'm just now starting to implement is blessing people, as anybody, as they're walking by, giving them gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, person who's checking me out at the cash register, like putting a circle of light around them, seeing them in their light. And it could be anyone. You might not know their name. You might not even talk with them. You might just see them in the car next to you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your purpose. Thank you for living in your highest purpose. I love you, even like whatever that is, just blessing random people. And it like fills your cup. It's so, it's, it's interesting, and it takes you out of self. It takes you out of me. Another one that's really helpful is tapping. If I'm feeling a little wobbly, like I'm really in my head, I'm starting to question myself, I'm starting to think negatively in fear, tapping on your heart space, tapping on your crown chakra, tapping on your forehead, here, right here, on your hands, just tapping. It brings you back into your power. Yeah, those are a couple of them.
Yeah, my favorite, uh, sacred healing practice that's been mentioned thus far on the podcast is by far Bubble Boy. That like for now forever will live as the best named healing practice and probably one of the most simple to do is just to kind of create that bubble around yourself, that aura around yourself to protect your energy, but also to like give it to others too as a gift and service. Um, do you ever experience times where you're in service and then an opposite frequency will come in and say, you know, that little voice in the back of your mind that's like, you're not worthy, you're not enough, you shouldn't be doing this. Does that voice ever come into play? That voice of like kind of questioning if this is really what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm. Yeah. We yes. We so I try to do at least one event at the yoga studio every month. And we have to come up with I like to come up with a theme. I like it to be something that's really present for me. And it was September 9th, the 9/9 portal. And I was like, I'm going to do an event on the 9/9 portal because it's such a powerful day for me personally. And it's just such a powerful day. And we were, I was like, I like to create a journey in my experiences, you know? And what was present for me is I had a lot of energy to move out. And the 9/9 portal is like, get rid of all the things that are no longer serving you. And now let's call in the newness. Let's get ready to bring in the newness. But in order to do that, you have to get a little uncomfortable and move the stuck stuff, you know, and let it go. And so I'm like, what am I going to do in this event that's going to invite people to get uncomfortable? No one wants to be uncomfortable when they go to the yoga studio, but yet yoga is, you know, finding comfort in discomfort. And, you know, some people don't know what they're showing up for. And on the flyer, I felt a little bad about this. I didn't mention that we're going to practice sacred rage or sacred anger. So that was a surprise. And no one was really like ready for that. And so we went through this journey of letting go griefs, of letting go things that we were holding on to. We would take a rock and we would put it into a bowl of water, and we would let go of things that we were carrying that no longer serving us, things that maybe we regret, or memories, or relationships, or whatever it was. We were putting those in there. And that was a little uncomfortable for people to do, and to be seen and to be heard and felt. And then we went into this sacred rage where we got a bolster, and I just played like some hardcore music, and I'm like, okay, this is where we're going to find our warrior self. And you invite the person to step into their like power and just let their energy go, and like bang on the bolster, get it out, you know. And if it's not for you, if you feel like I have nothing to let out, it's fine. Do it for the people who can't, who don't have their voice yet, who don't have the opportunity to do this, who have no clue how. Do it for the ones that you care about, who you know are suffering, or who are holding on to things that they don't know how to let go. Do that for them, because we can serve in that way too. And I had a group of 20 people who had no clue they were going to be practicing sacred rage. And I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't know if they love this right now. This is really weird for them. We live in rural country. No one's ever heard of even sacred rage. It's almost looked down upon to be angry, to show your fierceness. And our fierceness is a power if we don't let it control us, if we can control it, right? And so this is an opportunity for them to hone and like feel their fierceness. And I'm like, I know this is a gift, and I know they're like, this lady's freaking weird. This person's weird. I'm never coming to one of her events again. And yes, I felt like maybe, but then there were a few people who I looked around and there's tears coming out of their eyes and they're letting it go. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Thank you. And so maybe someone told me, if you're pleasing everyone in the room, maybe you're not doing it right because you're not pushing yourself you're just trying to make everyone feel comfortable. And it is a gift to navigate discomfort together. And so when that voice comes in, then sometimes I know, okay, maybe I'm doing it right. Maybe this is an invitation of, oh, okay. And I lived in Austin for 13 years. So keep Austin weird, like keep it weird. And so when that voice comes in, and then I look, you can focus. Where am I focusing? Am I focusing on people who are looking at this like, oh, this is so odd? Or am I focusing on the people who are really needing this, who really needed to let this go, who are having an emotional release? Like, yeah, there's gifts in it all. So
yeah, and there's gifts in being able to be guided into sacred rage, into that like sacred Kali energy, but then also being able to initiate a transcendence and inclusion of that anger inside your body so that you know how to stand in that anger in a really healthy way rather than in a way that might be harmful to self or to self-love or to self-pleasure or to any type of knowing thyself. And so it's such an important practice. And yeah, as somebody that facilitates, you're never going to please everyone. You just never are. And that's okay. But I think the work being done on sacred rage now is like so important, because if we think of our mothers and our mothers' mothers and their mothers' mothers, it's like they weren't able to express rage in any type of healthy format. And cut to, it's like, rage in partnerships even has like exploded into something where it's like, no, if we could really like integrate and transcend some of that sacred rage into like more of an approach from a wisdom perspective, and really like grounded rage, then we could have different types of conversations with people and show up in a different way in partnership. So I really think some of that work is so powerful. And even those people that maybe weren't really getting that into it, they're going to think about that moment and they're going to keep coming back to that moment. And then they're going to be like, man, maybe I really needed that. Right. And like, and maybe they never get to that point, and that's okay too. Out of curiosity, what's like your sacred rage jam? Like, what's your go-to like sacred rage song? If you just had like one song.
I will share my playlist that I played with you this morning, but it's Gone Girl. Oh, I have it on my Sonos. I could totally play it in the background real quick.
Are we
It is Little Girl Gone by Chinchilla. It
Little
is
Girl
like
Gone by Chinchilla. Okay. I
yeah.
can't wait to listen to that later. Mine's always and I turn it on in the car, and I actually used to turn it on. This was like from my early 20s to current, like it stayed the same song. I used to turn this song on when I was about to go to like a client meeting, when like back in the day when I was in sales, although we're always in sales, our whole life is sales. But when I was back in the day and I used to like go actually to client sites to sell, I would play this song only because I was like getting that stuck energy out of body. And I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I was just being silly. And I like when I was managing a team, I like made my whole team, we're all in the car together. We're like just raging, almost getting in accidents. So speaking of people like needing to take the steering wheel, definitely ran over a few curbs in my day. But yeah, so my secret rage song is Limp Bizkit Break Stuff, and it's just like it's the best. And to this day, whenever I turn it on, I'm like, let's go.
Let's go.
It like actually makes me laugh more than it makes me like rage now, because it's like a funny song to me. But yeah, you gotta have those go-tos just to like really get that stagnant energy out of your body.
There's another one too. First of all, I used to be a bodybuilder. That was like
Did not know that.
Yeah, I used
I'm
to be a
sorry.
bodybuilder
What?
in my 20s and my 30s. Um,
Wow.
which and so I would train to Limp Bizkit. Like that was my jam. I would be on the bike like, bro, just going. Limp is my jam. There's one more song that I play with my nieces. My one niece, Rhea, she's 4. She has she is ferocious. She is like she embodies animalistic like just ferociousness. And when she is in like this mode, she'll want to just okay, and we scream into a pillow together, and that is a great practice, especially for children. Like go ahead, scream into a pillow, scream as loud as you want. And so now, like, I'll visit her, and if she has a moment, she'll just grab a pillow and scream into it. And I'm like, I love that you use that tool. And then we'll listen to Purple Hat, Purple Hat by Sophie Tucker. Literally amazing. And we just jam out and we just move our body and move that energy. And like these tools are not just for adults, they're for kids too. And if we can learn them and practice them regularly, and we don't always know where we're at. Like I was invited to go to a yoga class last Saturday, and I'm like, okay, I haven't been to yoga in a hot minute. Let's go to just be with my sisters, with some friends, and to be in that space. And I started moving my body, and I was like, holy guacamole. I did not know I was this much in my head and that my body really needed this. So um, all of these tools are so helpful.
Yeah, and I almost find easier for children too. Like you're like, oh, it's not just for adults. I'm like, adults have a really, really hard time letting go sometimes. Whereas kids, you're like, hey, scream to that pillar. They're like, yeah, sure. Let me, let me,
Yeah.
let me just do that. And so it's kind of funny because we have to almost like go back to the embodiment of what it would feel like to be a kid again, and to really not care and peel away those layers of like judgment, shame, guilt, having to perform in a certain way or wear a certain mask in order to fit in order to not be shunned from community, tribe, place in society, and almost, peel away some of that so that we can then get rid of that stuck energy. And sometimes, when you're looking around that rage circled room and there's folks that can't quite get there, there's more layers to be peeled off first. And that's okay. And so just knowing exactly like where people are in that moment in time is exactly where they're supposed to be. And all of this is helping. All of this service is helping, and stepping up into the power of service is really helping people transform. And I love that both of us actually are doing this in a location that isn't super open to it or
Mhm.
hasn't necessarily experienced what it feels like to get really weird. and and so I think it's really special. Um, for those of you who don't already know, my husband and I own a coffee company called Gay Head Coffee. And of course, we drink our own coffee every day, and it's some of the most flavorful and inviting coffee, especially with the nostalgia of coming from a can rather than paper or plastic packaging. But I'm biased, so check it out for yourself. If you're interested, head over to the show notes where you will find a link to order your coffee today from gayheadcoffee.com. That's GAYHEADCOFFEE.com. Thank you all for your support. It means the world to us as a small business. You and I also talked about uh, the other day when we were chatting, we talked about kind of like the language that is used in certain communities, spiritual communities, within practice, just language that's like normally used that isn't necessarily language that is universal. And in both of us being able to like manifest and like knowing that words are spells, we talked about like a few phrases that were like, well, what does that actually really mean? One of those was like, what does it mean to like drop in, right? What does it mean to like drop in with somebody? and how deep do you drop? Like, and what does that mean to you? And what does that mean to me? And if somebody's like, hey, you want to drop in for a moment? And then after we talked about dropping in, I was like saying drop in like the whole day. And I was like, damn it, what does that actually like really mean to me? And I had to like really sit with it. And I think it's so powerful that you are able to dissect words, phrases, and also have such a close relationship with specific words. And I think it's because of your mantras and your practices where you do have like really deep relationship with language. And so I would love to get your thoughts on not only drop in, but like other phrases that are alive right now in communities that practice different sacred healing methodologies or ancient wisdom practices, call it spiritual practices, call it whatever you want. But what some of these phrases are that people use that are slang for something else at their core.
And what are the phrases that we use in our day-to-day life that are so prevalently accepted without being questioned or actually have thought or purpose behind them, like can't or I'm sorry. Like one of the biggest things that I'm in practice with, or I've been in, one of the biggest words that I've been in practice with is the I'm sorry. And when I hear another woman say I'm sorry 5 times in 10 minutes, you know, what that is telling their inner being, what they're subconsciously programming them. Like, I'm sorry for speaking. I'm sorry for being here. I'm sorry for taking up space. Like, no, the invitation, not no, but like, and thank you. Thank you for, I'm notoriously late. I am, you know, and I'm sorry for being late. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for just, there's a simple transition for giving, feel the frequency shift, and also like feeling like these communities that we are in right now don't actually have the opportunity to actually feel the different vibrations of words. And in order to feel, you need to slow down. And so if you can feel the frequency shift of I'm sorry to thank you, there is a significant frequency shift there. And it just takes awareness of where you're coming from. I would much rather have you receive the frequency of gratitude, even though I'm running 10 minutes behind, than receiving the frequency of lack and you know, feeling like wrong, right? Because you receive that. And so it is a gift for you and me if I can have the awareness of my words, and I can say, thank you for not being bothered that I just run into you, or thank you for, you know, whatever the silly things that we apologize for. They're so silly. Like, I'm sorry should be a real, like, that's a big gift, you know, if you were really, but it shouldn't be like this frivolous, like, I'm just sorry for being, I'm sorry for taking up space, I'm sorry for using words, I'm sorry for, like, it's giving ourselves a subtle message of unworthiness and lack. So to be in the frequency of abundance and gratitude is just such a much more gift for everyone, for yourself and for everyone in your world. So the I'm sorry is a big one. Can't. My mom, growing up, she's like, we don't ever tell anyone to shut up. Like, that's, you know, but because, you know, when you're a teenager, oh, shut up, it's shut up. That, but that brought an awareness to me, like, oh no, you're worthy of being heard. you're worthy of being heard, and I'm not going to take your power away in those things. And so that lesson as a teenager has reflected as, these other words, and like, can't, no, anything is possible. Believe in miracles. There are infinite possibilities in the world. We have these self-limiting beliefs. So those are the kind of normal words that peep into our culture, the wider culture. And then we also have our spiritual words. But you want to pop in about that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the I'm sorry, because I think that that's a huge one for women, especially because we have this natural tendency to be nurture and empath and motherly in certain ways, even if we aren't like true biological mothers yet. We have that energy of wanting to potentially like please and be accepted. And I see this all the time in like corporate spaces with women in not only leadership roles but just women in general in corporate spaces. And also I see it in yoga life too. And one of the biggest practices I went through with the words I'm sorry was in 2016. I went through like almost a 2-year relationship with the words I'm sorry, because I started to notice how I was saying it in corporate environments to men specifically. If I was late, or if I said something, or if I interrupted, which I do think there's part of interruption is like its own practice in itself, where I've had to hold myself back from that. So like a different practice, whole different river we could go down. Um, but in the space of where I was practicing the reflection of the I'm sorry was when I started to get my yoga teacher training. And one of my biggest mentors um, was in the studio that where I got my training, and we were going through sequencing, yoga sequencing, and we started to practice what happens when you make a mistake and you tell the whole class to do something like, oops, right, we already did the right side, and I just told them to do the right side again. Do you say I'm sorry? And the answer was no. She's like, no, because everyone's imperfect and everyone is going to make mistakes as a teacher and in practice. And yoga is a practice. And so we started to replace the words I'm sorry with the words rather, which is like such a subtle change. And so then, not only in my yogic life, like while I was actively teaching, I'd say, okay, we're going to lift up our right leg. Say we'd already done the right side. And I'd say, rather, our left leg. Right. And so it wouldn't be the I'm sorry, it would be the rather. And then I started to do that in corporate space to say, when I used to be in corporate, say, oh, hey, so blah, 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 blah. And rather, blah, 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 blah. Right. Instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry, this. And because I'm sorry was a filler. And so I'm like, okay, well, if you take away the filler, what goes in its place? Because sometimes it's really easy for people to like leave that space blank. For me, it wasn't so easy to leave that space blank. So instead of saying the word sorry, I said the word rather. And it started to change my whole relationship with that phrase in general, and started to shift my life really, because I wasn't apologizing when I didn't really need to apologize. And it made my real I'm sorries so much more emotional for me. Like I was like, fuck, I really do need to apologize for that. And that's heavy. It wasn't a whim word anymore. And I have started to like uncover parts of language in general that words are kind of weaving in this way where they have more meaning. And I've started to slow down a little bit, like the slowed down version of Jessica, who wants to go 1,010 miles an hour, is like slowly saying, oh, wait, your words have meaning. And you just gave me the beautiful gift again the other day, like 2 days ago when we were chatting with the word drop in. And so it's one of those things where you were like, well, what does drop in really mean? And I'm like, I don't know. I actually don't know. And so then I had to sit with it a little bit. I'm like, what does drop in mean to me? And what does it actually mean to the other people that are saying, oh, do you want to drop in? Well, what do they mean? And so I just wanted to reflect the I'm sorry version of it. Because that I spent a lot of time with that specific phrase and started to swap it to rather, which really helped me. So wanted to share that with everyone. But are there any other phrases that you feel like you've had a relationship with like that, where you've maybe had to take a look at the word and its deeper meaning?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, it's going back to the 4 agreements, right? Which is also another tool. Be impeccable with your word. Don't assume, don't take things personal, and always do your best. Those are the 4 agreements. But be impeccable with your word. To be impeccable, you need to slow down. You need to feel, what you're sharing. And the drop-in thing, I feel like drop-in is a sacred place. To drop into the heart space. That's what I feel like it is. It's to drop into my heart. And that's vulnerable. I feel like it means, like, let's get vulnerable. And I feel like sometimes in the spiritual community, it could be like, oh, let's drop in. I don't know. I just don't want to throw that out there. Like, that means, like, yes, I want to connect with you. There's a difference between, like, let's connect, let's drop in. Like, I drop in ceremony. It is a ceremony to drop in with someone, because and you probably don't know what's going to come up. And then, do I trust? I feel like you need to have a foundation with someone to really drop in. Not only do you need to trust yourself, but trust yourself in the presence of that other being, and have the intention of, well, what are we dropping into? Because every time I've dropped in, okay, for example, like, I've done the bufo, and one of the words, that surrender was my word for that year. And so, when you go into any type of ceremony or plant medicine ceremony, you have to surrender and learn how to surrender. And I'm like, I was this type A controlling personality type, who I was always in control. And so I had no clue what surrender would mean. And so sometimes when you're wanting to learn a word, and you have no relationship with it, you might need to physically embody or physically experience what surrender means without any control at all. So while I was learning what surrender was, I invited a couple of friends to go skydiving, because I'm like, well, what's the biggest surrender? Jump out of a plane, right? And so I went with the intention of completely surrendering, not like jumping out and screaming. I jumped out of the plane and I just observed, like, and like the guy behind me who was jumping with me, he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm just surrendering. I'm surrendering to the experience. I'm letting it take me." And so surrender is one of those words. Allowing yourself to let go, be vulnerable, let go of the control. That's one of those words.
We almost need like
What's
an
another?
urban dictionary for like for like deeper meanings of phrases, and like, oh, this is the phrase, but this is what it actually means in random spiritual community. I think another one that I hear all the time is like, oh, there's such a free spirit. And it's like, okay,
Are we all?
what does that mean? Yeah. And like, couldn't we all be part free spirit?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that actually mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's so many examples, but I think you hit the nail on the head with the 4 agreements and being really impeccable with your word. One of my other beautiful mentors, Stephen Jaggers, who owns a company, Somatic Breathwork, and where I got my somatic certification, he breaks down words in a way that is just so beautiful and studies the linguistics of, okay, well, what does that word actually mean? And one of the words that we dove into during our training was the word remember. And it's like, okay, well, what is remember? Okay, remember your memory. But it's also like to remember your body, to remember your being. And so what does member mean? Member is like a piece of your body, a piece of your soma. And so when, and specifically to breath work, it's like, oh, so we're releasing to remember ourselves, but we're remembering and then we're also remembering. And so breaking down words has become kind of like a pastime for me to be able to understand not only what does that word mean to me physically in my body, but how do we use that word in society, and how is that word used kind of flippantly almost in a way where we're not really thinking about the truer meaning of what it could mean if we thought about it on a deeper level.
Also, remember when you were saying it, I don't know if it's true, but it makes me feel like to put together, to member, like remember something. I mean, for some reason, I just get this feeling of like to put it together. I don't know why.
Yeah,
But that's
exactly.
what
Exactly right. Yeah, to put something back together.
mm-hmm.
Remember your whole
which,
being. Oh, yeah.
which is really interesting too, because lately, as of late, my memory of like, I'll see someone who I haven't seen in a couple of years and they're like, oh, do you remember when we did this? And I have no recollection of it whatsoever. And one of the practices that I've been doing is to be so present, like to be so present with you that I trust that this experience is changing my DNA, changing my cellular structure for the better part of both of us. And I'm not attaching on to any moments or any like trying to grasp on to keeping this, right here, right now. Just being so present that it's messed up my memory in a way where I don't hold on to like these things. And it's a little scary in a way. Is this just my experience, or do you have this? Is this normal?
Meaning, do I have the experience of somebody presenting a version of their memory and I'm like not remembering it myself?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, but typically, and this is kind of funny timing, but or synchronistic timing, if you will. I just spent a weekend with two of my best friends from childhood. One I met in second grade, and we're still friends to this day. We talk every single week. And the other one I met in fifth grade. And then the three of us became really, really close. And we're still very close. And we're all so different, like wildly different. Like I don't even know how we survived to this point because our personalities are just all over the place. And like the randomest signs, like I'm an Aries, there's a Taurus and a Scorpio, and it's like not really like your most like typical, like these people would be friends with each other, but we really are. And we've seen so many different versions of ourselves. And we went on a 14-mile hike this past weekend, and we were telling stories. And some of the stories, I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't remember that. But then it like came into the forefront of my mind. And it was cool and also interesting to hear the perspectives, like each of our perspectives of that same experience. And so I don't necessarily have the like, oh, I don't remember that at all, but I do have the like, this was my perception of what that memory meant to me versus like what they thought it was. So we did kind of have that like catch up on old times. But yeah, I mean our brains don't have the capacity to to remember all the things. So yeah, totally hear that. Yeah.
I love that you are navigating those friendships from childhood because they've seen all the different versions of you and still love this version of you, and have loved every version of you. That's such a gift.
Oh my
Such
gosh,
a
these are the people that have seen like me at my darkest moments and at my brightest moments, and and vice versa. And there's so little judgment between us. It's different than meeting somebody now, in my 30s and creating a friendship, because it's they're only seeing this version of who I am now and maybe the future versions of me. But like the version of like second grade me is that's that's so different. That's like you're in my childhood memory now and shaped who I am as a being. We both shaped each other. And it's interesting because, some of the most beautiful memories we had were like, oh, like when we first met, and we were both wearing Tweety Bird t-shirts, and like that's how we became BFFs. And it's like, like it's like the simplest thing when you're a kid. Um, and then that translated into like cut two. Now we're all, in our 30s and navigating so many different pieces of our life. And it felt really good to be with those two. And we haven't gotten together, the three of us, in quite some time. So it was really, really special for just us three to be together. Um, and also it makes you so grateful for like how far you've come in life, because sometimes you don't know how far you've come until you get the chance and the opportunity to look back and say, wow, like let's hold some reverence and gratitude for what that past version of me might have looked like. And also, these people have seen all this, chaos, call it whatever you want, trauma, all the things, and they still love me and they still show up for me. And they would still, if I called them tomorrow, we're all in different places. And it's like, if I call you tomorrow, you're gonna be there. And that's like the deep, deep, deep trenches of friendship that I'm so grateful to have on this earth. And I also have new friendships that are a different type of beautiful. So yeah, it was interesting because it kind of brings us back around to memories and and also getting closer to yourself, like knowing more about yourself, which has everything to do with being impeccable with your word, and has everything to do with almost, not analyzing yourself on this level where you like go crazy into perfectionism, because I've gone down that path before. Cut to when I made my first podcast, Bold and Vulnerable, which is still out there on Spotify. I I used to listen back to every single episode that I recorded, and I was like, oh, I hate the way my voice sounds. I said that wrong. I need to edit this. I said the word too much. Like I was just so critical of the way that I spoke, which was good in some respect, but in the other respect, it was not a great practice. And so now, in this new podcast, Sacred Healing, I have the opportunity and I have the gift to not do that. And I have the gift to be like, nah, you know what? If I mess up something, it's going to get out there in the community. And that's okay. It's going out in the world. It's going out in the universe. And guess what? Nobody's perfect.
Mhm.
And guess what? I don't have a team of 10 people running this show. And so it's going out there the way that it is. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I almost like that more. It's less uh edited, less scripted, less I'm gonna prepare all these questions, like, and get so caught up in what I want to say next, or what I want to ask, or where I want the conversation to go. But cut to, you and I didn't really prep that much, and a beautiful flow has arrived for us. And so I couldn't be more grateful for that.
I love, love, love it so much, because you and I think just in women in general, we want to be perfect. There is that. My first word as a child that I was striving for was perfect. Like that was one of my first, I want to be perfect. And then in my version, like everything I did, like had to be the best, that I could be. And I strive to be perfect. Then someone told me this beautiful piece of wisdom. Once you reach perfection, then where do you go? It is a ceiling that limits your growth. So instead of striving to be perfect, like always strive to grow. And growth was one of my words, right? Growth is uncomfortable. When you choose a word to embody, understand that you were going to learn the whole perspective of that word, right? You growth is very uncomfortable. And I thought, oh, growth is going to be easy. No, that was challenging. And grief, like this, learning, having these relationships from childhood, having them be able to see you in all of these different spaces. Sometimes people have a challenge as you grow, right? Because that makes them uncomfortable. And so not only do you, but also those people who can see you, it shows that you know how to dance with grief, that you can dance with grief and dance with the parts of yourself that are no longer present, but have gotten you to the space that you are in now. Like to dance with grief around loved ones, to dance with grief of all the things that we grieve, of the certain parts of ourselves that are dying off, of the certain parts of our world that are dying, and then that are being rebirthed. Like it's a beautiful dance. And yeah, I feel like that just kind of comes full circle with the, where the dark night of the soul started. And I had no clue what grief felt like, but knowing that it never ends and that it is a constant. And then when you learn how to embody it and dance with it and redefine it, it becomes a tool and a gift and an awareness and a practice that is never ending. Yeah.
Yeah. And being in relation with grief has been a lifelong journey. And I think it is a lifelong journey for everyone because you can kind of rock in and out of grief in different parts of your life, and it can mean different things to you depending on where you are. Um, one of the last things I want to ask you about is kind of on that same in that same vein of grief, but also kind of like how you dance through your fears. How do you get through the deepest limiting beliefs to get to the other side of what you know needs to be birthed into the world? And we talked a little bit about like resistance to showing up to serve at the beginning of this conversation. But I'm curious, like what those limiting beliefs were and are, um, and some of the fears that you've had in showing up to serve sound, cacao, sacred rage. What are some of the things that you say to yourself that maybe aren't the most serving, and how do you reframe that when you feel it coming on?
Fear, the relationship with fear. Fear is such a subtle and yet can be very profound if you feed it, you know. Um, and to have the awareness, am I feeding that fear? To have the awareness of how much energy am I putting into fear. Usually comes from a place of lack, or like I'm not going to have, like my partner, or I'm going to lose my mom, or I'm going to lose. It just comes from this place of lack to me. And so like, or I'm not good enough to show up right now because I'm not super centered. Or I don't feel like I've been embodying my practices regularly, and therefore I don't feel worthy of showing up because I've been more human than I have been spiritual.
Ooh, can we stop at that for a moment? Because I've
Mhm.
been more human than I have been spiritual. Okay. Um, what does that mean to you?
It means like the judgment I put on myself for not meditating at all, for just running errands and doing, for not connecting with myself, for spiritual. Life is spiritual. I guess being human is a spiritual practice too, right? Just it's I think um, dancing in the middle of the being grounded, and it feels like purgatory almost, like sometimes you're like so connected, you're so floaty. I'm just so on, just floaty and in this that like cloud nine realm ish, where I'm just so connected and I'm in heaven. And then that grounded feeling of I am so connected to like earth, and you just feel stable. But it's that wobbly space, that like purgatory of like I'm just letting it, all the energies take me. And then you kind of find yourself lost in the day to day,
I
rather
feel
than
that.
being in my, yeah.
Yeah, I feel that too. And like I try to come back to like, no, every moment is sacred, everything's spiritual, like just have fun in the mundane moments. Like, okay, you can do this. But then at the same time, I'm like, God, I don't really want to make the bed right now. And I like fucking have to. Like, and I make my bed every day, but I'm like, God, it's just like one of those things where it's like, but I could turn on music and do it in a fun way, but I'm like, no, I gotta do it fast. And so there's like this like always this concept of doing something faster than I need to do it, and always like the concept of like time is chasing. And I feel that a lot. And I don't know if that's like the pressure to do and be and perform and do the next thing and all this life pressure. But I find that one of the biggest practices for me is like slowing it down just a little bit so that I can enjoy those mundane moments. Like you said, those moments where you're like being human but not necessarily like spiritual. And
Mm-hmm.
and those are the everyday moments. Those are the most of the moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
fuck, okay. How can I better show up in self-talk in those moments to say, ah, I'm alive today. This is
Yeah.
another day I get to make the bed. This is another day that I get to fold the sheet in just a way so that when my husband comes upstairs, he's like, I want to get in this bed. And that's an opportunity. But sometimes I'm like, fuck, all right, let's do this thing. And that those are like the hardest moments. It's like for me, it's not the moments where I'm like stepping into a container to facilitate a breath work. I'm like, yeah, I'm jazzed. I got adrenaline. Like, of course, there's nerves and fear, like all the normal. Like, but for me, it's more about those moments where I have like impatience or like I want to get something done super fast just to get it done so I can do the next thing, to do the next thing, to do the next thing. And anyway, that's what I'm dancing with now. And it reminded me of it when you said those moments of being human, but not necessarily being spiritual in the way that spirit, I don't know. And what does spirituality mean? Here we are.
No, it's great. It's great. I have that with the dishes
Oh, the dishes.
and the laundry, like all the time. And I notice if I do put music on, going back to frequency, it changes the whole experience.
Mhm.
So I guess the key is just to have music on all the time.
Just all the time, just everyone have music, but not football playing super loud in the background. Just like a
Exactly.
nice music or rage music or Limp Bizkit. You could get some
Exactly.
stuff done real fast if you just play break stuff all the time. Um, I really, really could chat with you all day. And
Mm.
I've so appreciated and have so much gratitude that you said yes to coming and chatting. And I didn't realize that we were both on the East Coast, so maybe we will collaborate in some way, shape, or form in the near future. And thank you for sharing all of your gifts and all of your heart and personal stories. and ways that people can use these sacred healing practices and these ancient practices of sound and just tuning to heart and tapping and all the beautiful things that you've shared, tools in your tool belt, the bubble boy. Just everything that you've shared has been so nourishing, and this conversation has been even more nourishing. And so thank you for saying yes. Before we drop, is there anything else you're feeling called to share with the listeners?
My word also is that's coming up, I think, is nourishing, providing nourishment. So thank you for that reflection, and to know that I am living in my purpose in every moment, in my imperfections and gifts and all of it. It's all a gift. And thank you for being a reflection and a mirror, and for extending the opportunity to connect, to drop in, to be seen and heard.
We dropped in.
And yes, we did.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, and for me to step into discomfort, because this isn't necessarily something I do on a regular basis, and to know like it's all divine. It's all divine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Do you have a spirit animal?
Elefante.
Ooh.
Yeah, the Elefante. They're all over my house. I'm sitting at an Elefante table right now.
I have a little elephant right here.
Oh,
like a baby with a painted butt. I love him. Is there a quick story behind the elephant spirit animal?
I've never really dived into learning so much about the elephant. I just know every elephant that I see, I'm just like, I love it. I know that they're very intelligent, that they're wise, they're gentle and soft. They take up space. They're graceful. They're protective. They're family oriented. They're fierce, and they navigate many years. I think they're just so beautiful. They're so beautiful. They're powerful and soft, gentle, like all the things. And when you look into their eyes, I did this one meditation. We dropped in at a meditation in Austin, and they were asking for reflections after. And I raised my hand because I was still in this weird space, and they're asking for the pearl, like what the pearl was that it was taken away. And I just said, elephant eye. And the teacher was kind of like, elephant eye. But like, think about it. When you look into the eye of an elephant, it's so deep. It looks like the universe, it is so, and these beautiful eyelashes, and it's soft and strong, and it goes deeper than I've ever seen. It's just like this vast magical void, and it's beautiful. So yeah.
I love that you just described an elephant, but you also just described yourself. And I feel like that's why everyone loves Snuffleupagus. But also like you're so right. And if people listening like haven't had that type of a relationship with elephants, I personally have like had the like most beautiful opportunity to be able to spend some time volunteering at an elephant sanctuary. And it like they really are these beings, like when you look in their eyeballs, you're like, whoa, there's something else going on, and they're so smart. And so yeah, thank you for sharing your spirit animal with me. Such a random question, but I thought I would ask. I'm glad I did. And yeah, you embody the elephant spirit, so thank you for sharing that with everyone. And thanks for being on the Sacred Healing Podcast. I'm so excited and so grateful for the world to hear your voice, your introverted, extroverted, ambivert voice. So thank you.
I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.